Economics. What does the Bible have to say about that? How are Christians supposed to live in regards to money? Is money to be the most important thing in our life? Well, it is for most people. But is it to be? Our Lord is to be the most important things in our life. Money has really no value at all. Really doesn't. It is something that we have developed, that we can use, but tragically, oftentimes it is misused. The Bible has a lot to say about that which is misused. We're going to be looking at some extent here when we talk about scriptural view of economics, the morality of gambling. 80% of Americans, according to a recent article, says it's okay. There's nothing wrong with gambling. A little gambling here and a little gambling there does a person good. When we look around at the media, how it bombards us all the time about gambling. Oh, some of these casinos, well, they'll get you started real good. We'll get you started for $1,000. But they don't tell you all the minute details to that. And if you really listened to that, you'd probably think twice about getting plugged in on that kind of thing. But we want to look at this subject from a biblical point of view. Very important that we come up with the correct answers on this matter of the morality of gambling. Is it ethical for a Christian to gamble? Is it ethical? No, it is not ethical. We shouldn't be doing it. And yet many Christians are very much involved in it in varying ways. All right? Are all forms of gambling wrong? Yes. All forms of gambling are wrong. Yes. Are some forms harmless? That is, like, for example, bingo. Is that harmless? How about football, sports pools, etc.? As some people teach, there's nothing wrong with these. They're okay. But they're not. They are not. They are not okay. They're not something that Christians should be in for. Okay, there are two types of gambling in the U.S. today. That is legal and illegal. My, oh my. Well, I think it's pretty obvious that illegal gambling Christians shouldn't be involved in. How about legal gambling? Well, people say if the government's for it, it's okay. But biblically speaking, it's not. Christians should avoid gaming, gambling. The trying to, take a chance to get that big win so that we can retire, go on a worldwide trip for 6 months to a year, things of that nature. But it's interesting when you find people who are involved in gambling. First of all, those who are very wealthy, millionaires and above. You will find that very few of them will ever gamble. They realize how foolish it is. You see, when you're gambling, the deck is already stacked against you. Your probability of losing is far greater than your probability of winning. If it was set up on a 50-50 basis, would that make it okay to gamble? What if the pot was kept small, so it really wouldn't hurt too much if you lost? The principle is still there. It's wrong. God's method for us to accumulate wealth is to work. Yes. Have a business. Get a job. Do that which you become a productive individual in society and culture. And as a result of that, to be rewarded by being fairly compensated for that. And of course, all that is on a very great strain right now, these days, particularly worldwide as well as in America. Our economy is in serious trouble. And when it reaches that point of serious trouble, it can lead to some very disastrous things that will affect all of us. More about that in our next segment that we will be looking at following this issue of gambling. Gambling is viewed as a harmless activity until you lose everything. And then to that person, it's not harmless any longer. It's devastating. It is to seek to get money for as little possible as you can put into it. So the jackpot is $1 billion. Yes, we have jackpots that have reached $1 billion. In fact, the highest one out there was $1,600,000,000. And say, boy, if we only win that. But there's a lot of things that you don't see. First of all, those type of winnings are heavily taxed. So just because it's $1 billion or more, almost half of that, depending upon your income tax bracket, is going to go to taxes. So you're going to lose there. Then what if you and somebody else has the same winning number? Oh, that means two of you cut the pot. It's not that they give you two pots of $1 billion. The whole gaming system is set up against you. But it seems like it's so innocent. But many people get themselves in over their head very quickly. A number of years ago, Kathy and I went to Atlantic City. That's an eastern capital for gaming. And so we went through all the little shops and villages, things around the town. And then we went into the casinos. We did not play, we did not participate, but we looked and we watched. And I remember going to the area where the slot machines were at. Busy area. Well, there was those people who had rolls of quarters that they were just feeding quarters, pulling the lever, feeding the quarters, pull the lever. And usually they would run out of quarters before they won anything. And then you move on. And then you see people with paper money, dollar bills, feeding dollar bills in, pull the lever. The other dollar bill, pull the lever, and so on. But the one that really got my attention was, I was watching this one person sitting there putting in $100 bills and pulling the lever. I watched that for a little bit. $100 bill after $100 bill after $100 bill after $100 bill. Got nothing back. Very few people realize that those who are involved in the providers of gambling, it is stacked against you. Some of the best odds you have of winning is 40%. and it's usually less than that. It's however they feel that they can get the most people to gamble the most and be willing to lose the most before there's a winner. And they always have the story of the winners. Oh, those big winners. They say, wow, look at all they won. Pay off their cars, pay off their house, go buy a new house, take trips, do whatever they want to do. And they don't tell you about everybody that knows them, that hears that they won something, the sob stories that they will be hearing. Oh, if I only had another extra $1,000, could you help us out? And so on. You lose a lot of family and friends that way. All kinds of things like that goes on. It's not as glamorous as one may think that it is. Okay. Of course, illegal gambling is always wrong because it is against the law. It is therefore unethical and sinful for the Christian to engage in gambling. It just simply is. You won't hear much about that, but that's really biblical. But what about the legalized gambling? That is casinos, horse, dog track betting, state-controlled lotteries, cruise ship gambling, sweepstakes, raffles, drawings. Many even consider the stock market a form of gambling. And there is a form of gambling in the stock market. But the difference is you don't have to have losers in order to win in the stock market. You don't have to have that. But with gambling, it necessitates that those who participate, most have to lose in order to bring about a big jackpot to win. And that's a sad and tragic thing that we get into. And Christians should have nothing to do with this at all. Are these acceptable for the Christian? Of course not. They're not acceptable at all. And again, in a recent Times magazine poll, 80% of Americans said that gambling is acceptable. This magazine also stated that some 100 billion is gambled away by Americans. That's a sizable amount of money. Not nearly as sizable as $36 trillion debt that America has today. But that's a story for the next issue of things that we're going to be looking at. How do Christians deal with this? Okay, obviously, gambling is just as addictive as alcohol, nicotine, or drugs. Who profits from gambling? Organized crime, of course. Now, that doesn't mean that all gambling is a part of organized crime, but they have an enormous interest in it. And, of course, these days, the organized crime has become rather acceptable. It's just a way of doing business. But it still has the criminal element involved with it as well. All right? Well, does the fact that it's legal make gambling ethical for the Christian? No, it does not. Many things are considered legal by the government, but which God considers sinful. Example, abortion being one of those. Many places, until the court's ruling, it was perfectly legal across America, everywhere, to get an abortion. Now states have the right to make their own laws in regards to that. Some states says it's okay to get an abortion. In other states, it's banned. But abortion is one of those things that you have a variety of opinion on. Gambling is another thing you have a variety of opinion on. But what is it from God's perspective? There are many things the government approves that is actually sinful. Actually sinful. And so we need to remember that. All right? There are two views within Christendom, notice the word here, concerning the morality and the ethics of gambling. We're next going to look at gambling from the quote-unquote Christian point of view. And when I point out this particular organization that supports and utilizes this and accepts it as normal and okay. But it is far from being a Christian organization. We'll show you that. All right, here it is. The first one is the Catholic view. All gambling is not wrong, according to the Roman Catholics. Not to be disallowed or condemned. Small-scale gambling is a legitimate and fun way of making money for specialized programs. So what happens when the Catholic Church is not meeting budget? Bingo! Yeah. All sorts of things like this go on to underwrite and support. Seems all right. Seems like it's the Christian thing. But again, Roman Catholicism, biblically, is not Christian. That's just the plain, simple fact of it. And there's a lot of people that have bought into that, and they bought into everything that they teach, such as gambling, for example. All right? Their view is that the danger lies in excess. They say the same thing about drinking alcoholic beverage. Nothing wrong with drinking alcoholic beverage as long as you don't do it to excess. And what is the definition of excess? What is the definition of gambling? Excess, but what is the definition? And even if it's a small definition, it's still the principle is not right. It's not biblical. It's something that God does not approve of. Things that we need to be aware of and look out for. Now, number two, the biblical view. Gambling is a moral crime on any scale. There are at least 10 reasons. Actually, there's 12. But I was speaking generally at the first point. But there's actually 12 reasons. We're going to look at the 12 reasons why it is so sinful now. All right? A, because God ordained labor and work in order for man to earn income. In Genesis chapter 2, Adam was told to dress the garden. That was his job, his responsibility. One's earnings should come from one's employment, with the exception of gifts. If somebody gives you a gift, that's okay, that's acceptable. That's not gambling. But if you're going to gamble for it, that makes it sinful, because the motivation and the principle behind it is wrong. B, gambling perverts the biblical concept of honest, useful employment. In gambling, gain is secured without rendering in service or in value of productivity. Proverbs 13:11. Wealth gotten by vanity shall be diminished. But he that gathereth by labor shall increase. Earning money with a legitimate job, a legitimate career, a legitimate business, legitimately. You are earning money by providing a good or a service that is worth that amount of money at least, if not more. And these are things that we need to consider. And gambling is not anything to do with that at all. And there's people who will live on welfare. They will go and will take a significant amount of their welfare, in some cases all of it, and gamble it, hoping to get a return that's really big enough to pay all their wants and needs and whatever. Proverbs 10:2, treasures of wickedness profit nothing, but righteousness delivereth from death. The death here is both a spiritual as well as physical. How many people have gotten so buried in loss of money, loss of job, loss of their home, loss of their properties, and have committed suicide because of that? Physical death. So you have physical death and spiritual death also to consider in the products of gambling. Wow. The big challenges that are before us. All right? C. Gambling is just another form of fraud and deception. It takes advantage of sinful humanity by deceiving them into thinking they can get something for nothing or near nothing. It entices. Well, here is a classic car that has been fully restored. And normally they send those to the auction block and it goes to the highest bidder. But this one, if it was sent off to the auction block, would probably, fully restored with a certain amount of popularity, will bring 70, 80,000 at the auctions, easy. And in some cases, even much more than that, depending upon. But the local volunteer fire department decides to buy that car. They buy the car. And maybe they get it at a decent price. Maybe they get it at a not so decent a price. But what they're going to do now is they are going, you're going to get chances to win this car. And the chance may cost you $10 or $20. And so you decide to buy $100 worth of chances. And they will do this for a while until that they're pretty sure that they have got everything covered with a good profit. Well, because we're the volunteer fire department, we need this. And you buy this. And you think you've done a good thing. It feels good. We've helped the cause out, and I was fortunate enough to win this car. And so I walk away with this car having spent maybe $100 or $200 just trying to secure the chance of winning this car. And I won it. But there's others that may have spent much more than that. They may have looked at it and said, this is a very valuable vehicle. And they're willing to invest $1,000 or $2,000 or more into tickets, hoping that they will be the one that wins it. And it's all justified because this is for a good cause. It's to help the volunteer fire department. So when our houses catch on fire, they're going to be able to put it out for us. Things of that nature. Wow. Yeah. But it's fraudulent in its whole purpose, and it's sinful at its worst. Gambling perverts the moral character. When practiced by someone professing to be a Christian, it places a stumbling block before others, even when done on a small scale. Yeah. Our testimony. Oh, you're a Christian. And you're gambling? Yeah. Gambling teaches the exploitation of one's neighbor. For an individual to win, someone has to lose. Let's talk about the loss. In all the gambling situations, somebodies, plural, have to lose. Whether they lose a little more loss, or an enormous loss, they have to lose. For that one person who professes to be a Christian, who has bought that lottery ticket, and they won $1 million. And how many people who are on low-income brackets who are looking at this situation of this gamble, maybe I can hit it and I can get out of this hole that I'm in. It's sad, it's tragic, it's painful to see that. Someone has to lose in order for someone to win. That's bad news. Christians should never be involved in that type of economic thinking, no matter how you package it. All right, passage of Scripture, Matthew chapter 22, verses 35 through 40. This particular passage, a lawyer, not like what we think of when we talk about lawyers, but in the context here, it was one of the religious leaders who knew the Mosaic law, like the high priest, the chief priests, even the Pharisees. They knew, and they were highly respected for their knowledge of the Mosaic law. All right? Then one of them, which was a lawyer, asked him, this is Jesus, asked Jesus a question, tempting. The word tempting here is to put to the test. They were going to put Jesus to the test and say, Master, which is the greatest commandment in the law? And Jesus said unto him, Thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, and with all thy soul, and with all thy mind. Jesus continues, This is the first and great commandment, and the second is like unto it. Thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. Simply, Jesus puts this way. You love yourself, and how much you love yourself, you're to love all those people around you. Whether you know them or you don't know them, you're their neighbor. You're to love them the same way that you love yourself. Woo! What a challenge that is. He goes on to say, On these two commandments hang all the law and the prophets. Jesus summed up the 10 commandments and the entirety of the Mosaic law given by God to Moses for the Hebrew people to live by. And Jesus says, if you love God, yeah, with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, and then your neighbor as yourself, you actually put yourself in the position of fulfilling the Mosaic law that was given by God to Israel. Now, none of us are perfect at loving God like Jesus describes us here. Nor are we perfect in loving others as we love ourselves. But when God is finished with the Christians in purification, sanctification, and glorification, we're going to be just like Him in nature and character. When the work that God has begun in each one of us who believe, when that work is completed by Jesus, we will be just like Him in nature and character. Perfect. And that's what we will be for all eternity. Perfect. That's what salvation is all about. But the point that we're using to make with this is, does gambling come anyways near close to doing any of this that Jesus said that we should be doing? And the answer to that is, no, it does not. Our time is gone. We'll continue.